обсуждения попросили сделать сообщение стартовое, да.
Esteemed organizers have asked me to deliver a kind of an overview, introductory speech on assessing and maximizing carbon sequestration potential of Russian forests.
Как совершенно справедливо отметил Андрей Юрьевич Колпаков,
as Andrei Kolpakov has correctly pointed out in the plenary session, Russian forests, unlike the oil and gas industry, for example, are, shall I say, a conundrum. And this is in fact due to the reasons I'm going to refer to in the course of my presentation. Please note that we have invited some leading experts in the subject to participate in this discussion. And in my presentation, I'm actually going to present some of their findings, and I will also refer to some very important debates held very recently on the 4th of March in the Russian Academy of Sciences on the reproductive capacity of Russian forests. Nonetheless, we will try to discuss primarily we'll try to discuss this subject primarily through the economic lens, the macroeconomic lens. Now I see Natalia Vasilievna is online as well. A pleasure to see you, ma'am.
Общие вводные слова касаются роли лесов в вопросах поглощения углерода. Ее трудно переоценить, потому что...
Now, obviously, forests play a very important role in carbon sequestration. Actually, forests happen to be one of the most important regulators of carbon balance on this planet. And according to latest global measurements, boreal forests, forests in the northern parts of the world, taiga forests, a lot of which we do have, account for 997 petagrams of CO2 equivalent. And a particular importance of boreal forests in terms of carbon sequestration is due to the fact that unlike tropical forests, they do not experience the effect of intensive reductions or deforestation as a result of predatory timber practices. Now, Russian forests account for roughly 20% of global forest area. And apparently they account for 38% of total carbon stock with the world's boreal forest ecosystems, which means that they do have an important role to play globally. According to current official estimates coming from the national roster or register of greenhouse gases, Russian forests, or LULUCF sector primarily, can compensate for 26.6% of national GHG emissions. Actually, one of the presentations in the first session referred to roughly the same number. In this respect, huge reserves of these forests and huge forest areas can be seen as an important competitive advantage of the Russian Federation going forward, particularly if we implement measures to increase carbon sequestration by forest ecosystems.
В этом смысле возникает развилка и две важных темы, которые мы рассмотрим. Первая – это проблема.
Leads us to two very important discussions. One will deal with the quality of the carbon stock of Russian forests and differences in calculations. This is actually a holy war which has been raging for many years. And the second subject, something I will broach in the second part of my speech, will deal with the measures that will make a lot of sense regardless of how we assess the current sequestration potential of the same forests. Now, what I'm showing here is a table that compares various assessments of Russian forests' carbon sequestration potential.
Бюджета, которые являются, во-первых, официальными, во-вторых, альтернативными к ним.
So note here both the official assessments and those that can be considered alternative to official ones.
Лежит на Институте глобального климата и экологии имени академика Израиля.
So the Israel, or rather the Global Climate Institute named after academician Israel, is responsible for this kind of calculation, like the official ones. And they are, I'm sorry, they are using the methodology developed by Professor Zamolodchikov and his team at the Russian Academy of Sciences. So this methodology relies on the data coming from Safe Forest Registry for all the key data inputs. And according to this methodology, the average carbon sink potential of Russian forests, the average for the last several years, was around 536 million tons of CO2 equivalent. There are very different alternative assessments. There is, for example, VNIL, which is the old Russian National Institute for Forestry and Mechanization. And this team is led by Andrei Filipchuk. And I understand he's also been invited to this workshop. Actually, he is officially applied by FAO. Their methodological basis is different. However, they are also using data from the National Forest Registry. Nonetheless, their carbon sink estimate is almost 4 times higher. Actually, it can be 3 times higher depending on the time series used. And this result is very close to results shown by independent research groups. And please note that their results are not officially applied by any international body. This is true, for example, for the IESA results. And the same also applies to the studies conducted by Dolman et al. In 2012. You see that their estimates are actually higher than, say, VNIL numbers, but they are still in the same ballpark. Obviously, results provided by Rubble and used, rather drawing on State Forest Registry, are significantly lower than everything else. And this keeps many people asking all sorts of questions. I should probably say that it's currently a stumbling block in lots of our discussions of how we can improve the way we're using Russian forests to compensate for greenhouse gas emissions. Methodological differences between these different approaches have been discussed so many times, I should probably avoid this discussion here. Particularly, it makes a little sense to do that given the presence of the authors of the same approaches here today. Therefore, I should probably focus on something that should not provoke a heated debate. Actually, the registry of greenhouse gases made the same kind of statements. Low quality and low relevance of State Forest Registry data isn't it commonly recognized as an issue. Now, Andrei Filipchuk famously calculated that average data renewal rate for the State Forest Registry is once in 25 years. And he also calculated in 2018 that 57% of data in this registry was over 20 years old. And it is a commonly recognized shortcoming. Well, the reason for that is that operations of this registry have been underfunded for many years, and politicians saw little points in actually resuming funding. So it shouldn't be surprising that this database is out of date. However, for several years, this country has been running a stock-taking exercise of Russian forests, and the first phase of this exercise was completed in 2020. Roughly 70,000 test sites were used, and this data will be used in order to update the information contained in the Federal Forestry Registry. However, in order to process this data and introduce all the necessary changes, several years, up to 4 years, may be required, according to VNIL calculations. However, chances are that this exercise will result in, say, 30% increase of the estimates. There is another problem, mostly stemming from the documents of IPCC. Well, that is that it has to be, all the calculations have to be based on terrestrial techniques, which means that satellite imagery, such as satellite imaging or remote sounding techniques, are not allowed to be used. Now, it's an issue for sure, particularly for large countries. That's why we actually have a project where we're collaborating with the Institute for Space Research and CEPL of RAS, where we are trying to refresh our assessments using remote methodologies. It's important to stress here that as long as IPCC guidelines stay what they are, our calculations will not be eligible for usage. However, we still think they're useful and important because they should enable us to refresh our understanding of the current stock, so to speak, of Russian forests. I've tried to describe in this slide the thing that we care most about. This is a scenario forecast for the sink potential of Russian forests, and Andrei Kolpakov has already mentioned that according to the official forecast, actually stemming from a rubble methodology, the sequestration capabilities of Russian forests are expected to go down. Well, the current level is roughly 600 million tons of CO2 equivalent, but by 2065 it is expected to drop to roughly 120 million tons of CO2 equivalent, which is bad news indeed. And it will significantly undermine Russia's capability to deliver on its targets and commitments in terms of GHG emissions reduction. Note, however, that we are also showing here FAO data based on VNIL calculations, and their data shows that sequestration capacity of Russian forests is expected to rise. So the gap between different assessments, albeit it's already significant, actually keeps growing over time. Now, what I'm referencing here is a very short publication from Mr. Zamolodchikov's group. It's a short article, it's a conference paper, in fact. in 2019, and it is showing various mitigation strategies. What I'm showing here is a hypothetical maximum impact based on rubble assessments. And it is shown as this thick green line in the chart. Again, let me stress that it's based on rubble data.
Возраста лесных насаждений, то есть за счет того, что рубить больше спелых перестойных насаждений.
So you see, it's a combination fact of lowering the age of felling and reforestation of clear cuts and burnt areas.
Или улучшение системы защиты лесов от пожаров.
Also improvement of our fire protection systems.
Все вот это позволит добиться следующего эффекта.
And overall increase of forest productivity should give us a pretty good result of roughly 3.5 times improvement. I'm sorry. I'm just checking how much longer you would like to speak because I'm trying to control the agenda. Give me 3 more minutes, okay? Okay.
Говорить несколько медленнее, чтобы было переводить удобнее.
I'm just trying to speak slower, because I'm aware I'm being interpreted.
Существенный, и
so this is the impact. It is substantial.
Здесь также вот я попытался провести такой вычислительный эксперимент.
I also tried to conduct here this calculation experiment.
Стоимость СО2, тонны СО2 порядка там $40.
And if we assume cost of CO2 ton sequestration to be roughly $41, which is pretty much what it was in 2020,
о которых мы говорили выше, даст нам 10, примерно $10 на гектар лесных в смысле необходимых затрат. Да, то есть,
well, this means that we are going to spend roughly $10 per hectare of forest area on the proposed mitigation projects.
Потенциал продажи вот этих вот квот или углеродных единиц.
I'm also showing the potential gain of mitigation projects. Again, much of this is very speculative because we don't really know what the carbon unit trading system is going to be. However, this exercise alone shows that even rubble-based assessments will lead us to pretty rosy expectations. Very briefly, I'd like to describe here the projects that can be implemented and that have been discussed in a lot of detail already. So here, we're referring in particular to the need to improve control over forest fires. Actually, we have been seeing a pretty robust trend towards more and more forest fires ravaging Russian forests. Another major source of forest fires related to outbreaks of pests, and this is particularly true in Siberia. Significant part of wildfires happen in remote areas where firefighting is either impossible or extremely expensive. And we don't have enough forest roads. Now, all this are barriers, and we need a profound economic assessment here to arrive at the number. I will show you now how much these activities will cost. Obviously, we can clamor here for SFM practices. And what's also important in terms of carbon sequestration by forests deals with age classes, because many of our forests are mature and over-mature, which is not good in terms of carbon balance.
Лесоклиматические проекты. Есть уже и были
So
реализованы.
forest conservation projects are, in my opinion, the most promising idea here. So we had a very interesting experiment conducted by Rusal in the Bikin area, and there are several new initiatives like this. I took data from Bikin project publications.
То есть содержание вот такого проекта стоит порядка $25 на гектар в год.
And they show that they are spending roughly $25 per hectare, which sounds like okay kind of money. I mean, we still need to check how feasible it is, but if it is indeed that way, it should provide opportunities for some commercial projects as well. Now, Russian ministry is going to develop a new initiative for carbon polygons, and it will need further discussions. Experts have lots of organizational questions here. So I probably should save time by skipping the conclusions. But yes, I'm sorry, sir. Unfortunately, your time is out. Sure, no problem, sir. I'm happy to hand it over to Natalia Lukina, who is a corresponding member of the Russian Academy of Sciences.